And welcome to the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. Update on the library. What do we want to call it? I don't know if you can't.
Controversy. Fiasco.
What did I ask? What was the word I asked you the other day? And I was like, there's a specific thing. It wasn't chaos.
No, it was.
I forget what it was. The Gallup poll came out, and some of the numbers are, I don't want to say startling, but there are numbers in the Gallup poll involving the LGBTQ community that were surprising.
I'm not listening to anymore. Was it debacle?
Debacle. That's what it was.
Debacle means like right now.
It means right now. So if you use debacle to describe something, it has to be now.
It's present.
It is happening. Yes, most people don't realize
it's not going to be a debacle.
No, it isn't. And you can't say that it was a debacle.
Not really. Not correctly. Debacle is you are in it.
Yes, it's happening. And then we're also going to talk a really a cool story. It's a movie.
It's going to be a movie.
It will be a movie.
It will be a movie.
If you haven't heard about the Criminal app yet, we're going to talk about that after we spin the wheel. And then we're going to talk about some politicians getting slapped. And I was thinking about it. There were a lot more incidences of politicians having something done to them that I think you and I could talk about. And once you start talking about it and the wheels start to turn.
I only know one.
You only know one?
Because I just read it.
Okay. Oh, there's more.
You'll fill me in.
Before we get to all of that, the most important question of every day, Mark, how are you?
I am good.
Okay, that's it. You're just good.
No, I thought of a story that we could have told about my day yesterday, but we've all this stuff.
Can you do it in 30 seconds?
Yes, and parents will get this. So I take my kid to his first baseball practice. This travel team he's on. We drive all the way over to Hazleton. So we're a long way from home, and he doesn't know any of the kids on the team. So we get there, we're the first ones there because I'm like, the sports guy's like, we're not going to show up 2 minutes before practice running, like we're going to get there. So we get there 20 minutes beforehand, and no one is there.
Right.
And I'm like, there's no one here. There's no one, more anal than me. So I'm texting, right field, right here. Not texting, I'm scrolling.
Yeah.
So then 15 minutes before, 5 minutes later, some other kid shows up. So now we're relieved. We're at the right. So my son walks over because he's ready. He walks over to the dugout. Well, the dugout, but the field is locked. There's 2 gates on each side. There's padlocks on each one. So he hops the fence and goes and sits in the dugout, which is, that's probably what I would. I don't know. So the next kid, by the time he gets ready, he gets over and he sits and he tries the gate. It's locked. He goes and sits in the bleachers. So now I'm back down the right field line. That's where I parked, and I'm looking down the third baseline. And my son is sitting in the dugout. There's a new team. He doesn't know anyone. I think they practiced once, but we weren't there, but whatever. So my son's sitting in the dugout. So all the other kids start showing up, and they're sitting in the bleachers. And here I am, dad. And you're nervous for your kid. It's his first time. He's 14 years old or whatever. So all I can see is 12 kids in the bleachers, my son alone on an island in the dugout. And I'm like, oh my gosh. All I can see is the coach pulling up, having a team meeting in the bleachers, and my kid being like, and feeling like a moron, whatever. And so I text him, but his phone's in the car. He didn't take his phone with him. And I just like, eee. And you're making fun of me because you're like, no matter what happens, everything would have been fine. But as a dad, I'm nervous because it's his first one. It's his first new team, whatever. Yeah. And I'm just nervous.
I truly don't think I was making fun of you for being nervous. I think it's funny. And again, I'm not a parent. I'm naive to this. But I believe a lot of times parents project their fears onto the kid. So to you, in that moment, it's not that the sky was falling, but to you, something could be wrong. Something might go wrong. Something. And the funny part was Jimmy was probably just blowing bubble gum in the dugout and didn't even. So it is. When you told the story, I smiled and laughed because there is this idea of what we project on to kids or people we care about because we care so much, and we have these innate fears that sometimes we project onto them when really they're our fears. They're not their fears, they're ours.
And what people don't see, there's this belief that no matter what a kid does, he's doing something new for the first time, whether it's athletic or theatrical or musical or academic or whatever.
Right.
And then we want our kid to be the best, and we want our immediate thought is we just want our kid to blend in. We don't want our kid to stand out on the wrong end because the kid's overwhelmed or over his head. And this is just the first thing. I just hope this doesn't start badly. So fortunately, the coach pulled up. The coach came in the third base side, so he walked across the field. So the first kid he talked to is my kid, and then he opened the gate, and they had the meeting in the dugout, so everything was fine. Right. But there was like, and I'm standing down the line, I'm like, do I yell to my kid, like, hey, all your teammates are over there? Or do I, and they're only, over there is only like 30 yards away, but it just, it is, as a parent, you're just like, what do I do? What do I do? No. What do I do?
I guess, to me, like, the beautiful irony, like, the real comedy is, like, to you, the world was, in that moment, the world very much was shaking.
That was the only thing that mattered for those 3 minutes.
And it's just funny because in Jimmy's world, like, you're just watching the
if he heard this, like, he would be like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, no, that's so it's
but
it's
I'm just story. Like, I just don't want my kid, you don't want your kid to be embarrassed. You don't want, that's the whole thing. And like, so anyway, but so it all worked out.
I get it.
But you're right.
No, it's a good story.
All right, so the Metzger, we talked about having him on. They had a meeting at noon. And I talked to him literally 5 minutes before we went on the air yesterday. And he's like, yeah, let me talk to Tony Musar, who's the other person the other Republican who voted against this. And I texted him last night. He called me right away. And he's like, I forgot, like, whatever, is this the second Thursday?
Sure.
He's like, the second Thursday of every month, we have a meeting about this. And I was even like, what is that? And then I listened so well, I don't even remember what he said.
Right.
But he's like, Friday, we have a meeting at like 8:30 or 9. But then we're clear at noon. So he goes, let me talk to Tony and see if anything pops up or if we can work it out or whatever. So, so we have hope for tomorrow, but
yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's hard to get people on, like, available, especially like when something controversial
and when we're live.
Yes. And when we're live, like, we can't necessarily shift the time.
And it wasn't like they're not dodging. He's like, it's the second Thursday of every month or whatever. Yeah. Like, we have this meeting at noon, so we can't do tomorrow. So it's not like they're back huddling and organizing and planning and scheming. Scheming was the word I was looking for.
Yes. We released an article, NorthcentralPa.com, yesterday about, we titled it, Commissioners Request Books Be Removed from Pride Display at the James V. Brown Library. Our news editor, Carrie Pauling, wrote it. You and I both agreed, and we had several people reach out. She did a fantastic job of kind of seeing both sides of it. She has quotes from Metzger in it as well, giving his viewpoints and what he thought. She has quotes from a child psychologist as well, talking about kind of why they shouldn't be removed and the effects of them being there versus not being there. Really, really nice job. I think it's important we give Carrie a shout out for how great, because I think there's people that could have wrote really good articles about this and they could have focused on one side of it or the other side. Carrie was able to kind of draw here are the facts, here's what we know, here are quotes, here's what one side's saying, here's the professional opinion of the other side. She nailed it. In my opinion, she crushed it.
Let's give us credit too. She had us both prove it.
Yes. Yes, she did. Yes,
so we were a huge cog in this engine.
Yeah, I know. I disagree, but sure, whatever makes you feel better.
It just depends on your definition of huge. Yes. It's like debacle.
But if you've been listening to us, or you've been out, having conversations with friends and family, or you found yourself talking about it, please do yourself a favor and read what Carrie wrote, because regardless of how you feel or what side or whatever it is, I really believe she wrote maybe the most, what's the word I'm looking for?
Balanced?
One of the more balanced pieces about the topic and about the situation that somebody could have wrote. I really appreciated it.
It's hard in this world to find balance. That's what the world is lacking when we talk about anything political, and this has obviously become politicized as well. So yeah, and I give credit to because it has become a firestorm for these people. There's petitions going around asking for resignations, and it's whatever. And this went out, I want to say Tuesday. Today's Thursday. I'm trying to keep my day straight. So this was posted Tuesday, and they sat down with Carrie Wednesday morning.
Yeah,
like they're like, hey, we'll talk to anyone that wants to have a civil conversation. If you want to scream and yell and give middle fingers and fire profanities, then we're not going to do it. But they're like, yeah, we'll talk, because and I give credit to them, no matter what side of the argument you're on, that they're willing to have that open dialogue so immediately.
Yeah, I really hope they do come on, because I do think even after reading Carrie's article, again, I do think that it's a worthwhile conversation.
Oh.
I think one of the biggest, like, you and I, we've had really good conversations the last 2 days, because I don't think you and I are on complete opposite side of the aisles on this conversation, but we do, like, when we start to really dig into it and go down different paths, you and I do have different viewpoints of aspects. And I think I would love to have them come on, because I would love to just hear a third person's opinion who is out in the open, because the difference is you and I are having these conversations behind that door, right? Like, yes, we're coming on camera, but it's after you and I have kind of like hashed a lot of it out in our minds and have been able to vocally express it. It would be interesting to have a third party come on that, like, put it out there and made a post about it. And it's like, this is what I think, and this is what I believe should happen. It would be interesting to have a third party come on to just kind of be like, what, I don't know. I don't want to say what is the difference between actually putting your opinion out there, but really just like, once it's public and it's out there, you almost have to defend yourself. Like, you almost you put yourself in the position where you really need to be able to explain why you said what you said.
Well, I think what we do too, which is what makes us brilliant and why we have millions of viewers, is we're looking at we talked about yesterday, A and B and C and D, and there's so many different angles, and a lot of the stories that we come up with, like as we go to the next poll, like, it's not just, we're going to talk about the Gallup poll and the LGBTQ statistics, but we don't, like, we go with the numbers, and then we go with what's interesting about it. Like, even often when whatever we talk about, whether it's this or whether it's sports, you'll be like, yeah, we won, but this is what I found, like, this is what's interesting about why we won, because so-and-so played like crap and we still won big because this person and this person did that. So we look for this kind of the story behind the story, or the different angle that's not just the one that's right in your face. And that's, I think we would have a very good conversation with Tony and Scott tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. And again, one last time, go to NorthcentralPa.com. The title of the story, so you can find it: Commissioners Request Books Be Removed from Pride Display at the James V. Brown Library by Carrie Pauling. Please go check it out. It's really balanced, a really good piece. And regardless of what side of the fence you sit on this, because I think in our area, it is like,
you're one side or the other.
Yes. And so if you find yourself, read it, it's balanced, you're going to get to see both sides of it. I think you're certainly not going to be less informed by going and reading this piece that Carrie wrote.
I think that on our website, we should make an adjustment where it says written by, and then underneath it should say proofed by.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I want credit. I proved it.
Why do you want credit for that?
Because I proved it.
You do not want credit for that. Coincidence, the Gallup poll came out, and what's being passed around right now, there are some, I don't know which adjective to use, but the statistics and some of the stuff that they found in the new Gallup poll, I was surprised by some of them, but I think also too, like, the way media portrays things sometimes, like, you think the worst or you think the best, like, there's not a ton of middle ground. The new Gallup poll came out. First, there is a record high in the United States based off the Gallup poll. Over 70% of the United States is supporting same-sex marriage. The first time they ran this poll, I believe it was, or I'm sorry, not the poll, but the first time they asked that question in this poll, I believe it was 1996, and I believe it was just over 25%. So within 25 years, 26% to over 70%. But the other one too is a majority of members of the GOP, the majority of Republicans, back same-sex marriage for the first time.
Is that nationwide?
Yes.
Okay. And see, that's one of the things, as you said, as the media tends to portray, that all Republicans are against it. And on the other side of it, the media tends to portray that all Democrats are in favor of it. And while the Democrats, what were the stats you said? Republicans were 55%.
Yeah, I'll find the exact numbers. I believe Republicans, for the first time it was majority, I believe it was 55%.
I think independents, you said, were in the 70s.
Independents were in the 70s.
And then Democrats were low 80s.
Were 83.
83. So there are still 17% of Democrats, who is almost 1 out of 5, who are against same-sex marriage. And that's just not, we would be told that it's like 99% and 2%. And it's 55%. It's so, again, as we always say, we're a lot more alike than we are different.
It's even less than that because you're a numbers guy. So when you flip it, you could say 45% of Republicans were against same-sex marriage, whereas 17% of Democrats were against same-sex marriage. So, and the gap between 17 and 45,
it's close. It's not, I mean, it's not statistically, it's not super close because we realize in elections 60-40 is a blowout.
Yeah.
But it's a lot closer than you would think. It would be portrayed that we are on total opposite ends and every Democrat's in favor and every Republican's against, and it's just not true.
No. So I just thought that was really
those are fascinating numbers.
And again, like polls aren't perfect, especially we've learned here in the last 8 years, it's a far more complicated science than I think even professional pollsters had originally thought. But they do tell you something.
They're not totally wrong.
No.
They're more wrong than now. Sometimes the one we always go back to is all the polls said that. I say all the polls. There weren't all the polls, but most of the polls said Hillary was going to win.
Yeah.
And that's where it started going to when people are like, well, these polls aren't. But the polls aren't totally this is probably pretty close. And they always have the margin of error.
Yeah.
But that's what I got out of it. I've always said that people are more alike than they are different. And when you take away, I read this, and this is interesting. I found it interesting. Well, so you can decide for yourself. But it was a famous divorce lawyer, and he's handling Gates, Melinda. That's her name, right?
Yep.
He's representing her, and he represented Chris Rock. I guess he is but he's a very even-keeled guy. And one of the things that Chris Rock said is the guy has a 4% rule, and he's most of divorces, no matter how acrimonious they are, they get stuck on something that is 4% of the whole pie. And then he gets to the point, he's like, really? Are you really? And Chris Rock is when he laid it out to me, he's like, you agree on this and this and this and this and this. Are we really going to fight over this? And Chris Rock was like, oh yeah, when you put it that way, yeah, why am I fighting over? And so that we agree on so many things, and then we end up fighting over something little that's stupid, and we make 4% into everything.
No, it's a good point. The one thing, were you surprised where independents fell in that Gallup poll?
That they fell in between?
Not so much that they fell in between, but just I thought that it would be when I think of an independent, and again, I'm totally stereotyping. But when I
think of Bernie Sanders?
No, well, not necessarily. I wouldn't have thought that they would have been that close to where the Republican number fell. And again, it's a Gallup poll. It's a percentage. It's not exact science. It's not exact math. I just would have thought an independent would have been almost higher than a Democrat in that.
The only reason I would have thought that is because in the world nowadays, when I think of independent, I think of Bernie Sanders, and I think that Bernie Sanders is a little bit crazy. He's smart. He has some good points, but he's just so extreme that's what I was wondering.
I guess that's one way to look at it. A lot of independents now are just young Republicans with nowhere to go.
And that's fair too. How many independents, not to stereotype independents, because again, that's the poster child for independence nowadays. How many people are, like you said, that are just, they don't like this party, they don't like that party, so they're like, screw it, I'll be an independent.
Yeah.
Which you could make a strong case for that.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that more. That was the one thing, the independent number surprised me. I thought it was going to be higher.
Okay.
You want to thank Weis Markets?
Thank you to Weis Markets. Go to Weis Markets for all your grocery needs. They obviously sponsor us here every day on the Midday Show. We should probably say the views expressed by us are not necessarily those of Weis Markets, but our views are brilliant. So why wouldn't they agree? Why do you shake your head at that?
No,
all right, I shouldn't say our views are brilliant. Mine are.
Go.
Jeff's are questionable.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you to Weis Markets for so stock up for as the weekend is getting close through the summer. With all, as I say again, it's time for sunscreen. If you don't have sunscreen yet, you're late. But yeah, all this stuff. You know what else I end up going to Weis Markets when you stumble across that first wasp nest, and you're like, do we still have stuff to kill it? And you're like, no. So then I end up. So that's one of my trips too.
my dream scenario, I'm going to go back through every episode since Weis Markets has become the title sponsor. And you know how like they give you like promotional reads?
Right.
I'm going to get like the transcript of every Weis Market promotion you've read so they could see, and they would die. They would die laughing.
Because of all the things I go to Weis Markets for.
Well, and just in what you relate to Weis Markets.
Like
it's almost, one day we were promoting Weis Markets, and you started talking about hitting bees with wiffle ball bats.
You can get wiffle ball bats at Weis Markets.
I believe that. I believe it.
Or you could just get the bee killer and you could just spray the nest.
Those
are more hornets.
Who else could I possibly win a gift card from?
Possibly, or on the wheel. Well, you can't win from anyone because you're ineligible. But whoever we drew out, they could win one from the Moon and Raven. They could win one from Eat and Run Catering, or they could win one from the Break Room. Yesterday's winner, as it's still up there, won a $100 gift card from Weis Markets. There's a $25 gift card, a $50 gift card, and a $100 gift card. If you're feeling lucky, like say the New York Islanders, who just won Game 6 and advanced to the next round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, maybe you'll get a $100 gift card. Or if you're feeling like the Boston Bruins who got bounced, maybe you'll get nothing and you'll be a loser.
Nice. And today's random winner from the Midday Show Facebook group is Kimberly Boyce.
Kimberly Boyce.
Kimberly Boyce.
Is she feeling lucky? Do you think Kimberly's feeling lucky right now?
Math would say no. But you've been on a hot streak, so I'm not going to say no.
And if you want to join the Midday Show group, just go to Facebook, type in Midday Show group in the search bar, and we will come up and just join, and that's how you will get a chance to win. Your name will go in the hopper, and someday, maybe, if you're lucky, if you're like Kimberly, it'll get spit out. I don't think I'm standing up today. Did I stand up yesterday?
You never have to stand up.
But I do sometimes. It just kind of depends how I'm feeling.
Okay,
but
well,
I think I sat down yesterday and won, so I'm going to sit down again today, and we're going to see how she wins. Here, it's close. It's close. It's not close. Loser. Sorry.
Short. Sorry, Kimberly.
So she was the Bruins as opposed to the Islanders, which I know you watched every second of it.
I just can't do it.
You're going to see.
I don't understand it.
But when the crowd is packed, you've been to live hockey, right?
Live hockey is fantastic.
It is. The two best sports to watch live are hockey and baseball. You will say basketball because you can see more. I think basketball and football, you can watch it in your living room and you can see just as much. Hockey and baseball, you need to be there.
Baseball is a good argument, but the problem with baseball is that it's not about the game. It's like summertime, environment, the ball stand. I just don't think it has as much to do with the sport. They could be playing croquet, but if you tell me that we're going to the ball game to drink some beers and have a hot dog, I'm in.
That's part of it, but off the bat, you can see stuff. You can tell where the outfielders are playing. You can see if guys are up in the bullpen. There is a lot of if you're like a baseball nerd like I am, there's a lot of stuff because you can be watching on TV and they won't tell you if the infield's drawn in or not with a guy on third, and you're like, well, are they coming home? And they're up at the corner. There's lots of things sure. For a baseball nerd being there, you can see a lot. But for a basketball nerd, you can see a lot more in the arena than you can at home.
I get people I understand people saying watching basketball is my favorite. I will say though, the underrated part of going to a professional basketball game that people unless you've been in the first 10 rows or under the basket, you don't understand. One is how huge these dudes are.
Yes.
They are you can go to a baseball game and stuff, but you're not going to see dudes like the one that are on. And even in football, they're in pads. The field is removed from you. Until you're at a professional basketball game and there's a 7'1" dude 10 feet away from you, and then the other part of it that people...
He could be on your lap if he's going for a loose ball. You're that close.
And then the other part that people don't understand is getting to hear them as they're doing it. Because it's the only professional sport where if you're really if you have good seats, you hear everything. You hear what the coaches are saying. You hear what the players are saying to each other. You hear the trash talk. You hear it all.
And it's all PG-13.
All PG-13. But that makes it unique to the other sports you would go and see live. Is just the communication and getting to hear what's actually happening is so different.
Okay, I want to get to this next topic because it is a movie. But while because you have connections, you have friends, I assume you've had fantastic seats where you hear all this.
I've been fortunate.
have you ever heard anything that was just like so memorable other than just that was just like that you can say, but it was just like that you laughed, you're like, that is clever, not just like you suck, I'm better?
I don't know like so much directly clever. The part that I think always surprises people, whether it's like a college game or a professional game or even like a really high level pickup game, right? Like if you're in a game with like a lot of college guys or low pro guys,
which I'm in all the time. They always call me.
The one part that I think people don't realize is like how willing you are to yell at your teammates. Like, and so that's the funny part to me. Like you'll see like coming up this morning, LeBron yelled at so-and-so. But if you've ever played like college basketball or played professional basketball, like that's every day. Like that's every game. So the one thing that I would say to people is like, they would be shocked at how many arguments and disputes and how often you're yelling because the game's so quick and there is no huddle. And when you're an offensive player, you don't get to go sit during the defense and you get to say, hey, why did you do that? Like when it happens, you've got to get it out and they've got to understand like it matters. So what ends up happening is it's very to the point and it comes off very like vulgar, because like we have to figure this out now. There is no time because in 2 seconds, we're about to go play defense. So I would say to people like the biggest difference, I don't know if it's clever, but people would be shocked at how much bickering and arguing there is between teammates and they're absolutely fine. Like they're okay. There is no actual dispute. It's just the way of communication in that sport.
Then we would have trouble.
Because you see, like,
you bicker at me.
Because you see wide receivers and quarterbacks, they'll come off the sideline and they get a whole defensive possession to figure it out and talk about it and everything else.
They can look at the
But if I'm playing and like I need my center to roll and he keeps popping, like I don't have the opportunity to like as it's happening, like I'm saying to him, like you have to roll. And most people would view that as like, why are you yelling at him or why are you? But what they don't understand is like you have to get it out in that moment.
So, but here's my question. Well, I'll ask it in two parts. Yeah. We'll start with Jeff Everett. Do you say you have to bleep and roll? Or do you just say it politely like, dude, you got to roll?
I think it depends who I'm talking to. It depends, is it the first time or is it the third time? And the other part, this is the other.
And how often then does he say back, bleep you, I'm popping?
Absolutely.
I'm open, just you shut up and give me the damn ball.
It happens. It does happen. This is why there was a study done, and I know we're going off on a tangent, but some of this stuff is fascinating. There was a study done that most of the most successful basketball teams are not the ones who necessarily verbally communicate the best. They're the ones who show physical communication the best. So the best basketball teams are the ones where you'll see two guys screaming at each other, but as they walk by, they'll still slap hands. Or during a free throw, they'll be talking and yelling at each other, but they'll come up and they'll put their arms on each other, or they'll put their arm around their shoulders because
not around his throat.
No,
you need to roll.
No, but what
could you see a center picking up? I could see him. What was the biggest guy that you played with at Lock Haven?
6'8", 6'9".
I could see the 6'9" guy picking up Jeff by his throat and saying, I'll roll when I want to. You just pass me the ball and then put you back down.
Because
your little feet just dangling. That would be awesome.
It probably happens. But what the physical communication does, and you can relate to this.
I get that.
What the physical communication does is it alleviates the verbal communication. Mm-hmm. So even though you and I have no choice but to yell and scream and get it out quickly, and we don't have time to make sure each other's okay, the physical communication is letting you and I know that I'm yelling at you right now, but like it's like I'm with you. Like it's okay, but I have to tell you this now.
Well, I've explained that to my ex too, who was not an athlete and did not grow up in an athletic family. A lot of like you hear it as yelling, but it's just volume because I need to make sure he heard me.
Sure.
And I'm not angry.
Right.
I'm just like, listen, that's your guy. And like you said, you need to roll or we need to switch or, because somebody might be in the wrong defense and doesn't know that we've switched defenses. So it's not anger. It's just, I need to make sure it heard me because there's a lot of people in the gym. He's over there
and there is no huddle. There is no time. Like, we don't get over. So
I can't run over and be like, psst, shh, hey, we switched. Yeah. We're now man. we left the zone.
Yeah. So we talk a lot. Like there's times I have had practices where like I will force our players to give each other a high five. Like I will literally say to them, like, you've got like hit hands or like, you know, chest bump or something, because you two need to know that it is okay. Because right now you just think you're mad at each other. And the reality of it is one person is trying to get their point across. The other person is trying to get their point across. So you two need to show each other that it's all right.
Do you have violent chest bumps?
Not really.
You're like, you need to high five, but you need to cool down for 5 minutes first because I don't want to high five you with a closed fist to his jaw.
No, nothing like that. See, that's such the difference.
You ever had players like basketball? Because it happens in football sometimes. I don't know if it happened. In college, it used to happen. You ever have high school kids like throwing haymakers at each other in practice?
Like once or twice a year, it will eventually get to a point of boiling over. But again, it comes back to the idea of like, this is the other part people don't understand. People will go like, oh, they must not like each other. Well, no. In a physical sport, on a team, you play against each other. So it's not like you had to like play against them and then you get 2 weeks off until you see that kid again. It is every single practice. You're boxing out, you're hitting each other, you're screening each other. So by January, February, you're gonna have a day where like you just can't stand that person. Like you can't, because it's every single day.
I'll tell you what, and it would be interesting to have a coach from like coming here. You know, obviously I went to Susquehanna and played, but you know, whether it's Lyco, whether it's Bloomsburg, whether it's Penn State, it happens in football in preseason because they're like, we just keep hitting our own team.
Yeah.
And you will hear whether scrimmage, I'm not even sure if NCAA allowed scrimmages anymore. When I was at Susquehanna, we could have one, but I don't. But when it gets to the first game, and high school coaches will kind of say this too, we need to hit somebody else. All we do is keep hitting our own teammates, and we need to hit somebody else. And then once the season gets into a flow, you're playing, and in basketball, you're obviously playing all the time. You play multiple times a week. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it does happen.
No, I'm with you.
All right. Do we take up too much time? Should we save one of these for tomorrow?
I think maybe we should save both of them for tomorrow. I'm not really sure depending on if Metzger comes on.
Let's go to the last one. Let's go to slapping politicians.
You want to do slapping politicians?
Apparently in France, that this politician was like walking down the street.
His name is, real quick, just so it's factual, Emmanuel Macron. Macron.
So you're giving me the guy's name, you don't even know his name.
At least I know his name.
He's the president.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
And he's a president?
He is the president.
So I guess somewhere he was walking down the street slapping hands. And the quote from the guy, and I probably put it away because I'm a moron, but it was a really funny quote. He said something along the lines of it's just his happy but fake, what do you say, ungenuine or squirm. He just
basically he said he has a hittable face is what he said.
Yeah, he just said like, I looked at him and he was smiling and I knew that it was so disingenuous and it just made me mad. The guy's like, I had no plans on doing it. I could tell he gave me that fake politician's grin. So apparently he just went open hand, slapped him right across the mug. And I think as we talk to like people who are not politicians can tell you exactly what that fake, insincere, disingenuous politician's grin looks like. We've all seen it. And this guy just couldn't hold back and just cracked him across the face.
My girlfriend accuses me of that grin, by the way. I get accused of that.
Does she slap you across the face?
She says no. She says
she hasn't yet.
She says I have a bad habit of like when somebody gets upset, I will start to slightly grin.
That's probably a bad.
And so she says that only then further infuriates the person
that is
upset with me. But this is the part, like, I don't even think I know, like, because she says it's slight. Like, it's not like I'm like grinning like you see on my teeth. But she says, like, I do slightly start to smile when somebody, like, starts to lose it or when somebody starts to get upset.
Well, I can see in your way, I'm running off here and speculating, but that she's worked up. If she's worked up about something that you think is not a big deal, I can imagine the more she gets worked up, the more you're amused by, like, that she really thinks this matters. And I can see you going down that path. which only makes her more mad because she thinks it's a big deal, and the bigger deal she makes of it, the more ridiculous you think it becomes.
Yeah.
So I can see you doing that.
So you can't think of any other politician that's been like slapped or like had an instance like this? Because there's one that's really obvious.
There's an obvious politician that was slapped.
Not necessarily slapped, but had like an incident like this.
I can't.
George W. Bush. He had the shoe thrown at him. You don't remember this?
Who threw a shoe at him?
Let me look it up. And
because the one didn't Nikita Khrushchev bang the shoe on the table, right?
That I'm not sure of. Bush had a shoe chucked at him by an Iraqi journalist in 2008 in Baghdad.
You know, I think I do remember this.
It was a pretty big deal.
So...
At the time, it was a pretty big deal. He dodged it though.
Well, you know why?
No,
because Iraqis don't play base; they can't throw.
Well, you don't know that.
Like, if he was in the U.S.,
just because you don't play baseball doesn't mean you can't throw.
What do they throw? They play soccer. They don't throw. They don't play football. They don't play games that you throw.
I love that you just assume because a nation doesn't play baseball, nobody can throw.
If this happened in like Florida, the journalist is drilling them with it because they don't play sports where you throw.
There was also the Australian Prime Minister. I had to look up her name because I couldn't remember it. Julia Gillard. She had sandwiches thrown at her. I don't know if you remember it. It would have been like early 2010-ish. Like
sandwiches.
She had sandwiches thrown at
her. Like out of anger.
I mean, I think it was school kids, if I'm remembering.
Oh, it's a food fight.
Well, I don't know if it was a food fight. Some kid wound up and threw a sandwich right at her. You don't remember any of these?
No, I don't remember that at all.
Interesting.
That's awesome. After one, did she just get barraged, or was it just one?
I think it was just one, but I don't know for sure.
Because tell me that she's the you said the prime minister, the president?
Prime minister.
Could you imagine a prime minister going through a school cafeteria like for a total photo op and the kids just burying her in lunch? That would be fantastic.
And then the other one, this one doesn't count because he wasn't elected yet. So he wasn't technically, what do you call a politician before they're a politician? Like a candidate? Like
a candidate.
As a candidate, Schwarzenegger got egged. Do you remember this at all?
No.
Early 2000s, he was getting ready to give a speech and he got egged before he gave a speech while he was running. You don't remember.
I'm learning a lot here.
You don't
today.
remember any of these.
If John Mackey would have brought these trivia questions, who got egged while running for governor? I wouldn't have known.
It just surprises me that you don't remember any of them.
I kind of remember the Bush one now that you mention it. The food one in Australia, I do not remember. I don't remember Schwarzenegger getting hit with an egg.
But the Schwarzenegger one, because it was Schwarzenegger, but it wasn't a political. I don't even know what we would call this category.
It wasn't a hit.
No. Technically. We can talk about the criminal app tomorrow.
Yeah, because that's a great story.
That is a great story. Also, too, it gives me a day to like really dive into it and read more about it. Because
so don't you guys look it up. We'll do
it. You don't have to look it up.
Don't look it up.
Real quick, comments. Not a lot. Nothing specific today. Little bit of humor for you. It's pronounced Macron, not Macron. So there you go. You get it? See what he did there?
No.
Like he typed it out. You can't actually hear it.
Oh. Yeah, it's good.
No, you didn't appreciate that the way I thought you would. If you're looking for the story, Chris shared it, so you can actually go to the comment section. You can click on it. So if you're looking for the story about the James V. Brown Library, you can actually go into the comments, click on it, and read Carrie Pauling's story. And then somebody agreed with me. Tekla agreed with me, 100%, Jeff. Anytime someone agrees with me, I share it in case you haven't commented.
I read through yesterday. If you have not, go to the post of the show yesterday. There were lots of comments and all about the library and things like that. And there were some interesting ones. There were some you left out that I thought were very clever, that I thought were on my side, that I thought was intentional on your part to leave out. One I thought that was one of the people who were against the Pride display that said, "Thank God my grandkids are old enough that they have outgrown the library." And the immediate response was, why would you ever outgrow the library? Which I thought was clever. We've talked multiple times of how clever people are and the internet. And when you get away from the anger and vulgarity And there are some very, very bright people out there that this is their, and many of them use their intelligence through humor. Yeah. And there are some very, very good comments yesterday.
Yeah. By the way, people can comment once we're done. So,
correct.
Yes. So sometimes I don't always get to see the comments. The other thing that happens too is
so you're defending yourself.
I am. The other thing that happens too is sometimes when you reply to the comment, it doesn't always come up in our box. So if someone comments and they reply, I can't always share the reply to it. So sometimes I do miss replies or comments based off of where it is or what time it's shared.
I understand. No, so I'm just whatever. But they were good yesterday. They were really good.
I just want to make sure before you backed up the bus over me. So
listen, I would not back it over you. I would be going full speed. Didn't hit the brakes. He was shifting gears. You know that song, right? Little country farm for you there, right?
No. What song is that?
It's Garth Brooks.
I love Garth Brooks. What song is that?
He didn't hit the brakes and he was shifting gears. It's Papa's in the graveyard. Mama's in the graveyard. Papa's in the pen. Isn't that it?
Maybe. That one doesn't. I don't know.
I'm
really upset because I know a really good chunk of catalog from Garth Brooks, and
one night it did. Mama came home and it was just.
Did you ever watch the documentary on Netflix for Garth Brooks?
I saw him live in D.C. in the 90s.
So is that your way of saying no? You did not.
I did not. I saw him get some award at the Kennedy Center, but I have not seen a documentary on Netflix now.
He's a very emotional person, and it makes for a good documentary because he has this way of making every story feel like it was the pinnacle or the defining moment so for most documentaries, it's like this build up to the moment. And for the Garth Brooks documentary, it's just pinnacle the whole way because every moment for him was just defining and you can't convince him otherwise. And so there is a cheesiness to it, but also from an entertainment standpoint, it makes it a very good watch.
And you understand that me being a child of the 80s, I have an appreciation of cheese that you can't go through the 80s and not appreciate cheesiness.
He does the song The Dance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he talks about The Dance and when he first heard it and how it was developed and everything else. And it is so really good if you enjoy the creation of art, if you enjoy the process of making music, anything like that 10 to 15 minutes of him hearing the dance, discovering the dance, making the dance, it is one of the best 12, 15 minutes that you'll hear kind of about music. And
I think what was interesting about it the most is that because he heard it in a bar, some guy sang it.
Yes.
And Garth was nobody when Correct. He heard it.
Yes.
And not only, it didn't go on the first album.
No.
That he held, and that was part of the thing that the guy held it, that they had an agreement that and he put it on the second album. And I know he had Dixie Chicken on the first album, but the dance is what really broke him.
And I could be misremembering this. I'm pretty sure the guy who came in to do the piano. So at the very beginning of the dance, there's that piano. Right. I'm pretty sure that was the originator of the dance. And that was not part of the original song. So they brought him in, asked him to help work on it, and all of a sudden they weren't sure how to start the song off because it's when you're on a stool in a bar singing karaoke or whatever, you don't the intro.
You don't have a piano option,
you just kind of start singing it.
You just go.
So they were trying to figure out how to start it off, and he just sat down and he started playing that, and Garth was just that's it, there it is, and so they kept it, and it's really. I think I've told you too about the first time Dr. Dre and Eminem ever met. I think you and I have talked about that before. But the point I'm making, not to dive into that, but the point I'm making is for anybody who enjoys that kind of behind the music or how something was created or the origin story of something, this is one of them, the Dance with Garth.
I thought that the Dr. Dre Eminem story that I'd heard, Eminem took second place in some contest,
mm-hmm.
and he was going to fly. He won a trip to fly out from Detroit to LA to record something with Dr. Dre. That's what they won. And he was homeless at the time. And he broke into the old place that he used to stay that was condemned.
Mm-hmm.
And he slept on the floor there. He's like, no alarm clock. He said, how I woke up and made it to the airport on time is kind of a miracle. But that was the story that I'd heard. I don't know if it's true or not.
No, so elements of those are definitely true. So in this one, because it's Dr. Dre and Eminem telling the story, so I'm going to say it's factual. But in this one, Dr. Dre heard the tape of the performance you're describing where he took second place.
Okay.
So apparently there's just a room where all these tapes and cassettes where stuff would get dumped in for people handing out demos and people flying around the country and stuff. They all ended up in this one room. And whenever Dr. Dre would run out of kind of like inspiration or motivation or anything else, he would just go into this room and he would just start putting in tapes. And he would just all he would be doing is trying to find something that like sparked something.
Right.
And he put in Eminem's tape of this second place finish, and he just heard it. And like 3 minutes later, he popped the tape out and he went upstairs and he was like, I need to find this dude, like right now. And then what you're describing is what happened. Like they asked Eminem if he could fly out. He was broke. He was basically homeless. He had no idea how he was going to actually get there, how he was going to make the flight. Like he had nothing. And then he showed up. Him and Dr. Dre walk into the booth and they're kind of talking. And Dre says, you want to hear what I'm working on? And Dr. Dre played a sample, like he played the song, and it was My Name Is, for anybody who knows the song. And about 30 seconds in, Eminem just started, my name is who? My name is Slim Shady. And that was within like the first 60 seconds of the first time Dr. Dre ever played a song for Eminem. And to hear them talk about the story, it's a cool story. Like I kind of get goosebumps just talking about it. To get to hear Eminem and Dr. Dre actually talk about it and go, like, it is great. It's incredible. And you don't even have to rap. Like if you just appreciate art in the process and the grind, and like, it is a fascinating story.
See, I don't like rap.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a rap guy. I love Straight Outta Compton.
Mm.
I think the movie is great. I love 8 Mile. And I know that they're both like, one is a real person telling a fictional story, one are fictional people telling a real story, except it was Ice Cube's kid. So it's a little real.
Yeah.
But no, I love Straight Outta Compton and the stories of where the world came from and Biggie Smalls and, you know, and he was obviously East Coast, but
there's something about
even though I don't like, if I sat down and listened to a whole Biggie Smalls album, like 5 songs into it, I'm like, it just gets to the point that it all sounds the same to me.
No, I understand that. There's something about the origin story of music that I'm a sucker for. Where the song came from, where the artist came from, how it ended up being, like, I am such a sucker for that.
No, I get it. I've seen the stories of Snoop Dogg and how he learned to rap in prison, and Tupac is just it's the amount of volume that Tupac produced in 24 years or whatever, however old he was when is mind-boggling.
Oh yeah, it's out of this world.
Like all he did was work.
It's out of this world. I think I told you one of the last podcasts I listened to, they had the lead singer of Counting Crows on.
Yes, Adam Dershowitz.
Okay, and he was walking through, like, they just kept saying the song, and he would give like a 3-4 minute background on like where it came from and how, and it was like one of the best podcasts I'd listened to in a while, because it's just like story after story of like how they came up with it and where it came from, and then we did this little tweak and that was it, and that was the moment, and we knew we were gonna. So I don't know. There's something very unique about that process and what it lends to storytelling.
I agree.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. Thank you to Weis Markets for being our title sponsor. Be sure to go there for all your grocery needs. And thank you to NorthcentralPa.com. Be sure to go there for all your local news. One last plug. Be sure to check out Carrie Pauling's piece on the James V. Brown Library incident.
And hopefully we have the commissioners tomorrow. We're trying. It might work out.
That's what we're pulling for. And we'll talk about the criminal app tomorrow. Maybe we'll do a Rotten Tomatoes tomorrow.
Maybe. We'll see. Who, you never know.
You never know on the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina.
Ooh, that was a little rappy there. A little
watching.
Rhyme scheme. You never know on the Midday Show.
You like what I did there?
Look at you. You Dr. Dre should be calling you next.
I don't have a demo.
There it is. There it was.
There it is. Cut it up. Chop it up.